Greetings, mortals. Welcome to this session of the Infernal Court in musical hell. I'm Diva, your judge, jury, and executioner near, far, wherever you are. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the RMS Titanic. It was one of the great tragedies of the 20th century, so of course Hollywood did what it always does with horrifying events, turn it into a movie so they can earn a lot of money and awards off of it. And where there's big Hollywood blockbusters, there's cheap-ass film companies making similar movies in hopes of cashing in on the trend. Such is the case of our next offender, Titanic, The Legend Goes On. There are lots of direct-to-DVD mockbusters out there, but this one sticks in everyone's mind just because it's so absurd. An animated kids movie based on the Titanic sinking? That's considered bad taste even down here. The fact that Italian director-writer Camillo Tetti actually went out and made this movie is almost condemnation in and of itself. The scary thing is that it's not even the first animated Titanic movie to come out of Italy. That would be Legend of the Titanic. That's right, this is a knockoff movie of a knockoff movie. You don't get much more low quality than that. Oddly enough, the credits list Disney writer Jim Magan as a creative consultant. I have to wonder what that consultation sounded like. All right, so what your story needs is two semi-attractive people to fall in love, a bunch of unattractive people to serve as villains and comic relief, a bunch of cute animals for more comic relief and merchandising opportunities, and a few songs including a weepy awards bait love ballad. Oh, and you might want to avoid the ugly historical reality of your subject altogether. It worked for Pocahontas. What horror hath his advice wrought? Let's examine the case of Titanic, The Legend Goes On. The film opens in media res, because in media res is a cool Latin phrase they teach in screenwriting classes, and we get some shots of the people we'll be spending the next hour with, and mostly they're reacting. Oh, how they react. In fact, one character feels the need to react in the exact same way no less than 3 times. This brings up the first sin of Titanic, The Legend Goes On, the hyperactive, nonsensical editing. I don't know who edited this movie, but from the look of it, I would guess it was Edward Scissorhands on a red bull bench. I mean, look at this. They're not even reacting in the same direction. And why is that one woman laughing? The entire movie is like this. Clips are cut up, spliced together at random, and reused endlessly. It's a 60-minute film with about 15 minutes of animation. They even reuse footage to pad out the end credits. To top things off, the whole movie is told in flashback, so we've already seen half the ending. That sounds like reason enough to just abandon the film right here, but on we press. We meet our heroine, Angelica, a poor orphan girl who dreams of finding her long-lost mother.
Stop moping over that picture. You're never going to find your precious mother.
Your precious mother!
As you can tell by Angelica's evil, well, moderately annoying foster family, she's pretty much a bargain bin Cinderella and the first example of sin number 2, an abundance of copycat characters. Even by mockbuster standards, this movie rips off a lot. In the boarding montage alone, we find obvious expies of Cruella de Vil and her henchmen, Azrael the cat, the Mouskowitz family, Jessica Rabbit, Pongo and Perdita, Granny from the Sylvester and Tweety cartoons, that bird from the Secret of Nims, Speedy Gonzales, Sherlock Holmes, and Adolf Hitler? You're probably thinking that's a lot of characters to squeeze into a movie this short. However, Tetti comes up with a clever way of dealing with the various storylines. He doesn't bother. Sin number 3 here. Too many plot threads that don't go anywhere. This movie has an entire arsenal of unfired Chekhov's guns. For example,
What have you got in there?
Things that might be useful.
you'd think that's the sort of thing that will come up later, right? It never does. And then there's the detective's plotline.
Actually, there's a notorious gang of thieves I'm trailing in disguise.
They set up this whole cat and mouse thing with the detective and some jewel thieves, but the detective never actually does anything about them. Not even when they're trying to rob people right under his nose.
No need to get flustered now. I saw everything.
Really? Then why didn't you do something about it? It's not like these guys are particularly good at what they do. Look at them. They're about as stealthy and subtle as the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. A good chunk of screen time is devoted to Angelica's orphan locket, which she loses on the pier and is picked up by a smarmy French guy named Gaston.
I want a guy that Gaston.
Oh, like you weren't thinking it. Gaston is the manservant of William, who is handsome and bland, and therefore our hero. William has a dear old nanny who, would you believe it, is missing a daughter.
I wonder if my little girl has had a proper education. Expect I'll never know.
Yes, I'm sure this will never come up later. Meanwhile, the cute marketable critters are planning their own get-together in the cargo hold, which results in sin number 4, which I will let speak for itself.
You know there's something you should know, so I'm gonna tell you so. Don't sweat it, forget it, enjoy the show. Working all day, now it's time to unwind. Kick back, relax, take a load off your mind. I'll be busting the moves and I'll be busting the rhymes. We'll be busting up laughing cause it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time.
How can I even begin to comment on that? Where would I start? The dog's 90s rapper gear and boombox, the random reaction shots, the out-of-nowhere slapstick scene in the kitchen, the graffiti backdrop. Even if you ignore the fact that this is a rapping dog in 1912 on the damn Titanic, it's still so completely random and absurd that it defies description.
Confused? You won't be.
Actually, yes you will. I've only covered the major plot threads so far. We haven't even gotten around to the fat southern con artist who uses fake jewelry, her dog, and bad editing to land a sugar daddy, or the mouse who has a comedy scene with the ship's cook for no particular reason, or the corpse-like old lady who gets targeted by the thieves. But we still have a lot of sinful ground to cover, so let's press on. William and Angelica kick off their upstairs-downstairs romance by stumbling into one another in traditional meet-cute fashion. Hey, it's a low-budget movie, and that's the cheapest introduction they could find.
I bet you look ravishing in this.
I love a woman who can wear a pup tent well.
Laundry day, see you there, under things, tumbling.
There's not a whole lot of talking or asking names or anything, but William decides that since he touched her personal effects, it must be love, and tries to track Angelica down.
Come in. It isn't every day one has the pleasure of meeting a young man of such breeding.
It isn't every day.
Have you another daughter? Or another young lady travelling with you?
No one else.
I seem to have made a mistake.
You're unattractive and therefore evil, bye! Meanwhile, there is a lot of meanwhile in this movie. Gaston. Last time I used that joke, I promise. Gaston gives Angelica's necklace to the ship's remarkably endowed lounge singer Molly, which for vaguely defined reasons makes the first officer upset.
I told you not to get familiar with the passengers.
I'm always a perfect lady, and I've nothing to be ashamed of.
Not wearing that dress in the early 20th century or not. Oh, and we'll examine the first officer's sins in depth later on. Right now, it's time for sin number 5, the bland, overly generalized love ballad. This song, Holding Me, is the sort of song that cropped up in the end credits of a lot of movies around the 1990s, especially animated ones. And about 99% of them were vague, sentimental musings that didn't have much to do with the actual movie. When you get right down to it, you could substitute any of them into this movie and it wouldn't make much difference.
I can show you the world, shining, shimmering, splendid. And can you feel the love tonight? You know it's true.
I will
problem with Holding Me isn't that it's dull and vague, even by the standards of dull, vague love ballads. The problem is that it's the only song Molly knows, and she performs it constantly. This thing gets more reprises than the theme music of an Andrew Lloyd Webber show.
Ever hoping there would come a day.
I will say, though, they are getting an excellent piano sound out of that string quartet. During the first of these endless iterations, William and Angelica finally meet.
Now that I've found her, I'm not going to let her get away from me again.
And William officially enters the land of the creepy. He invites Angelica to the ship's reception, even though she thinks someone so rich and handsome couldn't possibly be interested in someone as lowly as herself, because she's the humble, modest type who can't even work up the energy to be angry about the unfair treatment she receives.
He asked me to go with him, but I've nothing to wear, and my stepsisters would never lend me a suitable dress. Never mind.
Darling, there's a fine line between being nice and being a doormat, and you are over it by several miles. But of course her cabin mate just happens to have a dress in her size, which is surprisingly stylish for 1912, despite the fact the old lady looks about 40 years too old and 50 pounds too heavy to have used it recently.
I haven't worn this since my poor Francis took me to the opera for the first and last time.
That didn't end so well. So Angelica has her dress. Now all she needs to make her day complete is the return of her precious orphan locket. Luckily, Angelica has the cute animals on her side, because she was either very sweet or very stupid and invited a small rodent to eat her food. In the real world, this gets a bunch of mice in your snack stash, but in cartoons it earns you an army of small furry minions.
Yes, and while you're on your rounds, keep an eye out for a locket lost by a very sweet person who's kind to animals.
After much comedy and near castration, they manage to pin down the locket's location.
You realize the locket that French masher gave Molly could be the missing one.
Yeah, it sure looks like the kind Fritz told us to keep a lookout for.
How do they know that? Zoom in on that locket. Huh. Okay then. The animals steal the locket back and return it to Angelica, who thanks them for the now disease-ridden trinket in a very unsanitary manner. And so our fair heroine is ready for the ball. And not a moment too soon, for young William is pining away for his beloved and thinking back to all the times he and Angelica were together, which isn't a whole lot to think about. In fact, I'm pretty sure his flashbacks start having flashbacks before Angelica makes her grand entrance. She pinned up her hair. She's gorgeous. But alas, Molly recognizes the locket she assumes is hers and accuses Angelica of theft. Oh no, how will the poor, innocent girl ever clear her name?
Perhaps the locket is back with its rightful owner.
What does he mean by that?
Oh, nothing at all. Je suis sûr.
Huh. Well, I guess it won't be an issue. Way to avoid conflict there, you guys. Oblivious to all this, William and Angelica share a tender moment.
But now... No, you know nothing about me.
Nothing you could tell me could prevent me from loving you.
I don't know about you, but a line like that just encourages me to think of all the things I could say that might prove him wrong. However, the evil stepfamily does not take kindly to Angelica finding love. Now surely they will find a way to thwart the young lovers.
Come here at once.
Or not. Come on, people, step it up. You can't have the little anthropomorphic mouse fight all your battles for you. Back below the...
Cat and dog will stay confined until they can behave themselves.
Okay, thank you, random exposition voiceover. The animals have finally gotten around to having their own party, complete with sin number 6, Mucho Gusto.
Same old thing, day in, day out. You're looking for something gusto.
The only reason why this isn't the most random, pointless scene in the movie is because this is a movie that has a rapping dog in it. Unlike rap, mariachi did actually exist in the early 20th century, but why? Why did the animals set up a Casa Bonita in the cargo hold? Why are these crude stereotypes performing a song about as authentically Mexican as Taco Bell?
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
And muy buenos dias Nacho Grande to you too. On the human side of things, the jewel thieves report to their boss.
It's a fake!
Okay, enough of that scene, I guess. Elsewhere, everyone's settling in for the night, the animals are sleeping contentedly, and, let me check.
How she must have suffered. I'll make it up to her. She'll have no cares from now on. Just be happy, happy, happy.
Yes, that was the incoming irony. It's finally time for the foregone disaster. Oh, so now you're going to try and establish mood? The iceberg of fate is struck with much reacting, and such is the destruction that the same spot in the hull ruptures no less than 4 times in a row. Luckily, Angelica and her cabin mate are already dressed and ready to go.
Let's find out what's happening first.
All right, I'll go and see.
Ah! Abandoned ship! We're all gonna die! It's probably nothing. Despite the crew's best efforts to bail out water into midair, the stock footage continues to take damage, so the passengers run in place to the lifeboats as William power walks to the rescue of his beloved.
What's that noise?
We hit an iceberg.
What's the quickest way to 3rd class from here?
Down those stairs to the right. But you may
Well,
find
turn down the cockney a click, will you? As the lifeboats are being levitated to safety, the passengers scramble for the few precious seats by... engaging in slapstick comedy? Really, movie? You're in the middle of one of the most famous disasters of all time and you've gone Looney Tunes? That's it. You've just earned yourself sin number 7, inappropriate humor. Sure, you can have comedy in a tragedy, but not during the most tragic part. That would be like having Hamlet's death scene crashed by the Three Stooges. Despite the shenanigans, William races to his beloved's side, but their escape is thwarted by the first officer.
Can't go through this way. Don't force me to resort to violence.
I mean it. There's only one of me and... hundreds of you! Okay, time out for a history lesson. The actual first officer of the Titanic was named William McMaster Murdoch. Like most of the crew, he went down with the ship, but not before overseeing the evacuation on the starboard side. Nearly 3/4 of Titanic survivors owed their lives to his efforts. It's no surprise that he's regarded as a local hero in his hometown of Dalbeattie, Scotland, so much so that they were incensed when the James Cameron film depicted him accepting a bribe from the villain and later committing suicide. I can only imagine how they would have reacted to this particular interpretation of the man, who is annoying enough to earn sin number 8 on our list. The first officer in this movie is, to put it lightly, a jerk. He sneers at everyone in existence, shoves another officer out of the way to get on a lifeboat, and then spends the rest of the movie yelling at the other survivors for every little thing.
Keep rowing. Sit down. You're unbalancing the boat. Let him go. Leave him. Who did that? Keep still. Everyone keep still.
And I'm not sure, but I think they even go so far as to imply he's responsible for the ship going down in the first place.
Shut up. Try to keep the boat on course for a change.
Quite a disservice to Mr. McMurdoch. In fact, I don't think I want to dishonor his name with the association. We'll just call this character Officer Snooty. So while Angelica and most of the semi-relevant characters escape on Officer Snooty's lifeboat, William escapes the ship by breaking a window with a Pier 1 chair and doing parkour, and there's a great deal more reacting as the ship sinks, an event so momentous that it happens twice. But as fate would have it, Angelica just happens to be on the same lifeboat as, you guessed it,
Mommy! Oh, Mommy!
I hope you understand that neither I nor your father wanted to give you up.
You were just a terrible burden on our lives, and we needed to be rid of you.
It is strange, though. I finally found my mother. Only to lose William.
William?
You know him?
That tall, handsome young man traveling on the Titanic? Yes. I brought him up and gave him all the love I wanted to give you.
So in a way, you're brother and sister. Ooh. But this tender reunion is interrupted by the discovery of a body floating nearby. Could it be William?
We can't take on anyone else. We're too full as it is.
What sort of a sailor are you that you're afraid of falling in the water?
I don't know. Under the circumstances, it seems like a reasonable concern. But alas, it only turns out to be the useless detective. After the animals are rescued by some dolphins, really, that's all the time I'm spending on that dumb plot point, they find the same body in the water, and this time it does turn out to be William. Angelica's pleas restore him to consciousness, and they make out while waiting for the Carpathia to come pick them up.
Wait a minute, where are you going? The movie isn't over yet.
Oh, all right, if you insist. In brief, the animals are taken in by the ship's cook, the stupid detective decides to become Kojak, the stepsisters end up with the jewel thieves because, well, just because, Gaston goes to work for the corpsey old lady, again, just because, and William and Angelica get married and everyone lives happily ever after. Except, you know, all the people who died horribly. Softening the rough edges of your source material isn't necessarily a bad thing. Disney's made some pretty good movies that way. But using an actual event where lots of people died for the purpose? Well, that's just disrespectful. Also, it helps if the movie is good enough to justify the liberties taken, and Titanic, The Legend Goes On doesn't even come close. It's badly animated, badly edited, and contains 3 of the most irritating songs I've ever been exposed to. With that in mind, the Court of Musical Hell orders these punishments. For having the attention span of an ADD goldfish, we condemn the editor or editors to be trapped in the Hell Multiplex during a Michael Bay Film Festival. For inflicting his dog-rapping, mouse mariachi, lame-ass ballad song stylings upon the world, we condemn Matt McGuire to be forced to wear an iPod playing nothing but anti-drug PSA jingles and those dull albums you find in Hallmark stores. And finally, for dishonoring the memory of Titanic and its victims, we condemn Camilo Tetti to servitude aboard a Costa Cruise Line's vessel. Hey, I'm in hell already, I can make that reference. So let it be recorded. This session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell is now adjourned.